Welcome to Oh Hell No with Nicole.
Welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today we have someone very special. Her name is Hansy Barraza. Did I say it right? I gotta
You
keep
did.
that. Okay, good. She is my childhood BFF, and she is also an entrepreneur, an author, and a professor. So welcome, Hansy. I'm so happy to have you with me today.
Thank you, Nicole, for having me.
Yes. So, the first thing I want to say is we've been friends since like middle school. And then her mom moved her away from me in high school. Not me per se. I think it was the boys, but then I lost my BFF. But one thing I do remember is that she always wanted to be an architect. And that's what you grew up to do. So I want to ask you, what intrigued you about architecture?
Well, that's a really great question, and you're gonna get all my honesty here, and it'll be surprising if one of my students actually pulls the podcast because they'll know everything about me. But
Wow.
I wanted to be an architect since I basically was maybe in third grade, I would say. So since third grade, and the reason is because when I first immigrated here with my mom, she was a single mom. She lived in very small kind of rooms. Like she had a great friendship network, people that supported her, and she would rent out rooms with friends that she knew. And I basically moved around room to room with her until we lived like in an attic space. And I always recall that I wanted to design our house or our apartment. And I think that's what led me to wanting to be an architect. I wanted to design her house. I wanted to live in my own house. And I pursued the dream.
Wow, that is really interesting. I never knew that. So what was your major in undergrad and graduate?
So my undergraduate degree was a Bachelor of Architecture, and I got it at Cornell University. And then my master's degree was a Master's of Architecture in Urban Design, and that was at Harvard University, Graduate School of Design.
So why'd you pick urban design?
Well, so in my undergraduate degree, I was always really interested in the small scale, in terms of like the domestic spaces, how domestic spaces are gendered spaces. I was always interested in issues of gender and race in my undergrad. And as I started expanding into the field of like race and architecture and urbanism, I wanted to look at systems at a much larger scale, and that's why I chose urban design. I wanted to see if there was kind of patterns that existed in the cities that provided these kind of areas and zones of the haves and the haves not. I wanted to see if it was systematic or whether it was intended. I wanted to just really understand it at that much urban complex scale.
Wow, girl, you are smart. I always knew you were smart, though. So was there ever a time...
We were smart because we were trying to always not get in trouble by our moms.
Yeah.
What we had in common was we were raised by really caring, loving, strict moms. And now we can understand because they were trying to get us out of trouble.
Exactly. Yes, that's very true. Trying to keep us out of trouble, even though I still got into a lot of trouble. Damn. See, your mom should have never moved you. So was there ever a time during your studies that you felt like maybe this was not the career for you, or you were always like driven by your passion and you knew that this was something you were supposed to do?
I think I was always driven by it. I would say that there's certain things in let's say my educational career that that I was confronted with in terms of obstacles. But I think the drive was, the more I kept hearing of no, or that's not possible, it just drove me more to a very focused path.
I love that. So when you start out as an architect, what kind of projects are you assigned to, and what do you get to do? Like, as you know, fresh out of college or grad school.
Like what kind of projects you end up doing at a firm?
Yeah, like if you get hired by someone, you know, fresh out of
Right.
school, what do they allow you to do?
Right. Well, so the good thing about once you've graduated, you have choices. So there's different types of path that an architect can take. Like I mentioned, I've been always very focused. So when I finished any kind of internship that I had, or when I finished right out of college, I looked for firms that were first owned by women. Right off the back, I wanted to kind of work in a firm that had a mentorship already kind of given. And so I, in the beginning, you're kind of just learning, and you're putting together drawings, concept visions for a variety of projects that can range from a house to an interior or to a restaurant. But in the firms that I was working at, they were kind of smaller at scale at that time, where I was working with a peer, with one of the owners.
Okay. When did you decide to branch out on your own, and how did you know that you were ready for that? Because you have your own studio, or is that what we call it?
Yep,
Studio?
it's called Studio Luz.
Yes.
The company's name is called Studio Luz Architects, and which takes on my mom's name and also means light in Spanish. The way that I knew I wanted to start the office, and the office, I started originally, and then my partner, my husband, came on board. But when we first started the firm, I was working a lot of hours for another firm. And I was working so much, and I didn't have a life. I literally just woke up, ate, drank. Everything was just the firm. And I decided, well, if I put this much effort into someone else's firm, I'm sure if I put this work in my own company, I must be, there must be a success route down the line. And so that's how I started our own office. I shifted that labor to our own work. And that's how Studio Luz kind of emerged. The good thing is you have to exist, but you have to have a project. So at least my previous firm, I was working at that time for a firm called Office Da, and at least the principals did provide me with a smaller kind of interior project to branch me off. So it wasn't that bad. There were some good points to it as well, working for another company.
Oh, okay. See, that's what I always read, that you can spend your time making someone else's dream come true, or building someone else's dream, or you can invest that time in yourself and make your dream come true. So that is just so on point, what you just said about putting all that work into your own dream of having your own studio.
Correct. You have to exist, or else that's the first important part. You have to exist.
Yeah. What did you struggle with the most being a new business owner?
Well, where is the next project going to be? Who's my next client? And I think with being an entrepreneur, and I think maybe it deals a lot with, who I am as a person, and kind of the struggles that I had personally. I never gave up. So if there was no work, I would create work. I would find work. And what I mean by that is, maybe it was not a very large project, but we would start with kind of smaller arts project, working with the community, doing pro bono work, just getting my name out there, or the firm's name out there, to lead potentially to a project that does pay.
Right. That's smart. So what is the hardest part of owning a business with your husband? And I'm not trying to get you in trouble, so be careful, girl.
Having a company with Anthony has been great. What's been he's laughing right next to me right now. What's been great is we have a really great kind of, before we got married, we were really good friends, and I think we had a foundation in terms of trust and already kind of given. And we're both architects. We love what we do, and he was smart. He knew that I wanted to always have a firm, and I always said I would have it with two other women. But we moved, and he jumped on it. Let's have a firm together. Actually, it was a mutual kind of decision. But it's great. Sometimes we work all day and not talk to one another because we have different projects.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like yesterday, we played hooky and watched Star Wars. at
Oh,
lunchtime.
that's
So
nice. I like that.
so there's it's a break from evening being home with the kids, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But the good thing is that we have already a common trust there, and we can build on our projects together, without rethinking the trust issue, which some business partners might have.
So the one thing that I always ask entrepreneurs and business owners, especially when they're partners, I say, what do you guys disagree about the most? Is there any one subject that you can almost always guarantee there will be pushback from him on? Is there?
Well, I think we're both designers, so immediately the biggest pushbacks is design ideas. So,
Okay.
for example, I might like a more circular round form. He might like a rectangle form, and we start going at it. Obviously, it has to be performative, and reasons behind it. But we're each individual creative people. Like everyone has their own creative ideas, and whenever you try to share that through drawing, those are going to be contentions, right? But I think we both can agree if you have a really good idea, that always wins. The proposal.
Nice.
Sometimes it's a compromise, like marriage.
Right. And it's good that you know that, right? Because some people just don't get it. So today, do you feel like you are where you have dreamt of being as a business owner, or do you still feel like you're working towards a certain goal? And if you are working towards a certain goal, what does that look like for you?
So, owning a small business, we've had it since 2004. So we're going on our 13th, 14th year. And I would say our projects have increased in terms of size, in terms of budget. I think what is always really difficult is because we're a boutique design firm, meaning we don't necessarily just accept any project. There has to be a purpose, a design intent. Our projects our business is like a roller coaster. We have some really great years. We have some not so great years. So you have to have a certain kind of financial backing that would take you through the slow years. And it hasn't been easy, especially when you want really top design out there. In terms of opportunities, I think that's probably one of the obstacles. Opportunities, like I credit the private developers for giving us opportunities. It's rough out there, and I don't want to say it's. How do I put this? I think that when we were looking at systems in terms of racialized spatial systems that exist in the city, right, between the haves and haves not that are systematic, I would say professions work that way as well in terms of access and equity. So a larger firm that's been around since 1960s, 1980s, they just keep getting larger and larger. They keep swallowing smaller businesses. So how do I compete in that, right? So it's almost like the Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Putting out all of these local stores. Small businesses are just similar to that. Luckily, we're a service industry, but how do you move up in scale? How do you deal with demographics that is extremely diverse? So, for example, I would love to be working with clients that are Latin, that are African American, that are diverse. And I think that those are the goals that I would like to strive for in terms of developing a community or working with the community.
Absolutely.
I would say those are successful. Yeah, those are successful goals. How do you break through a system that has just privileged those that have been here and that have wealth? So that's the constant struggle that I have. I've managed to break through a little bit with an institutional client like Wellesley College, where we designed their multicultural center. But how do you do that at a larger scale, right? So it's removing yourself from type. Can you give me a building at the university, that that expands on it?
Right. Oh, boy, I get it. No, because I was watching this show. I can't remember what it's called, but they, at the end of it, what's his name? Dr. Dre and this other guy, I think, what's his name? Jimmy Iovine or whatever. They ended up building some kind of arts or music arts. I don't know if it was like I think it was like a whole building for a school. I think out in LA, it was like a whole development. You know what I mean? So it would be nice if you could partner with people like that. You know what I mean? Because they're doing it for the community, and it's like a large project. So I totally get it. But girl, we got to do some work. You know, find out they're PR people or something.
Right.
So you and your husband, you guys redid your home, right?
Yes.
And it was featured in Boston Magazine.
That's right. Boston Home Magazine.
Yes. And they labeled it as a super green home, or is that what it is? Do you guys call it that too?
No, for us, it's just our home.
Well,
but when we did it, our intention was to say, okay, can you build an affordable house that is sustainable, meaning, you keep your utility costs low due to a very insulated kind of exterior. Can you build a home that keeps the inside warmer longer periods of time? So, so it's adopting certain kind of technologies that would do that. Is trying to be off the grid in some sense, meaning you're not really relying on so much fossil fuels. So a lot of our it's an electric majority home. It's not based on oil, gas. So that was kind of a strive to be a little bit more environmental sensitive.
Okay, yeah, and I've been to her place, and it's really fabulous. So, what was the process like for you and your husband? I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions all at once. I'm going to ask you, what was the process like? Was it expensive? And where did you two have to compromise the most?
In terms of the design of our home?
Yes.
Okay, so what I think it's really hard for homeowners to know is that you can actually get a construction loan to build your home. So the whole house was completely based on construction loan. We did have a very small house, like about 710 square foot house, that was on 2 lots of land. So that's just how we bought it in 2006. We had a lot that had an extra lot of land. So what I did is we separated the lot, and with the construction loan, they did see that lot as equity. But we took out the most that you can from a conventional loan, which I believe is like $410,000, $410. And with that, we were able to get a contractor on board and to design it. So was it 410 at the very end? No, it went up. And at that time we were working really hard, like more than 2 jobs, to make up for the cost overruns. But at least we were able to do it. And I look back and I couldn't believe that I was pregnant as well. So the construction took 10 months, and literally we had occupancy when I went into labor.
Oh, wow.
So,
girl.
Yep. Focus, right? Talking about focus.
Yes. So, what piece of advice can you give to homeowners or business owners who want to hire an architect to help them with remodeling projects? Like if you had to just give like 2 things or 1 thing.
Okay, so remodeling or building new?
I say remodeling because a lot of, sometimes people need to do that.
Yep. So with a remodel, what you want to do is you can do it from an equity, right? So you can refinance to get kind of an equity line. And I would say you can get an equity line to do it as your buffer, like when there are cost overruns. It all depends on the cost of construction. So what I would say is if you have the funds, great. I wouldn't necessarily use the funds. You can take an equity loan and use that for reconstruction of your project. Again, it all depends on the cost. So I don't know if it's a $200,000 or a $30,000 kitchen expansion. But what I would do is there's 2 types of companies that you can do, and I can't believe I'm suggesting this, but if you have a very small renovation, like a kitchen, there are companies that you can go there, like, even like a Home Depot, right. Even though in terms of going there and having them help you with the specifications of the cabinet. If your project is a little bit more complex in terms of moving walls, that's when you would need to have an architect involved.
Okay.
To make sure that you're not going to tear down certain kind of structural components of your house.
Right.
So an architect, it's attainable. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I can't afford that," but you can go and consult with them. So get some advice. Say be very straight up with them. What are your hourly fees? If I want to consult you with this, always get a price in front, and then get a proposal from them if your project is much larger. And sometimes you might have a budget, and the architect can tell you whether your budget is reasonable or not.
Right. Okay, that's great advice. So you are also a mom. And
yes.
I want to know, how do you balance work and family life? I was just telling a friend today, first, before you answer that question, that we are amazing. Working moms are amazing. We really are. Because I'm working from home today, but I'm like working from home. I'm doing laundry. I'm checking off my list. I'm doing a podcast. Don't tell my 9 to 5. But
I won't, Nicole.
We are so amazing. I mean, seriously. So first, I want to say you are amazing. And then I want you to tell us how you balance work and family life.
Well, you're amazing too. You inspire me when I look at your Instagram and look at your carnival photos. So
thank you.
I know to strive for also having some break, some relief time. So in terms of how do I balance work and life, I don't know if we ever balance, completely. But what I can say is, when I'm home, I try to be there for my kids in terms of quality time. So when I'm there in terms of quality time. When I'm working, I try to focus as well professionally. I would say one has to prioritize.
Yeah.
And so, for example, priority for me is always my kids' health. How are they doing? Just to check how are they doing today? But to say, okay, this is going to be my schedule, and when I'm home, I'm not going to answer any emails, any phone calls. So it's basically whatever you do, whether it's work or being at home, is to be there. And there's certain times when you're really stressed, and that's when I would say, that's when you need a break.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to know when to take a break, because sometimes when I need a break, I get psycho.
Yeah, you need to stop and shift gears. Yeah. And that goes with anything, whether your business is doing, whether your business is struggling or whether you have issues with your spouse. You have to stop and check and recheck and change your behavior. So yeah. I think you have to be nimble in that way if you want to be happy in the long run.
Absolutely.
But I do always tell my husband, if you're not happy, change it.
Yeah.
Like I don't have any tolerance for unhappiness.
Yep. I like it. So tell us, what is the Big Hammock?
Oh, the Big Hammock. That's always a popular. The Big Hammock was an art installation that I did in 2010. Mm-hmm. And it was in the financial district of Boston. Basically, it was a real fun, that's when Twitter was kind of emerging and starting, and a tweet came by and that said, hey, do you want to win $1,000 for a great idea? You don't have to apply for a grant. And I've been used to applying for a grant, which is a very laborious, long process. And I just tweaked them or filled out a 30-second application, and I gave them an idea that I wanted to build a large hammock to bring people together that wouldn't otherwise socialize. Mm-hmm. And that's how it started. But at the end, it didn't cost $1,000. It was much more. But what was great is it held 20 people. Mm-hmm. And we actually had weavers weaving it on site for 4 days. So while people were working in a financial district from sky rises, they're looking down at at the length it took for one fabric to be woven. And it was really quite an amazing event. So that's basically what it was. It's just a humongous hammock to bring 20 people together.
So is it still there, or?
No, it's a temporary public art installation on a greenway.
Oh, okay.
Since then, we have installed it in Rosendale, and actually the community where I live in Adams Park. And since then, there is a potential for there to be an installation at Harvard as well.
Oh, nice. So let's talk about your book. Where are the utopian visionaries? Architecture of Social Exchange. You wrote this book, or you edited this book, or what was that? Because on the front it says edited by, or was that just a way of saying that you also edited it?
Yeah, so basically I edited a series of essays. I basically came up together with the team to look at some of the ideas that I was interested in at that time, which is basically an interest of connecting social theory that's out there with the urban and architecture environment. Like, where do they intersect? So it was looking at issues like race, gender, ability, and does that social issue have anything to do with how we experience our environment? And so I collected it. I had a symposium. I collected a series of papers. I edited it. I changed some of it. I gave some advice on how to change it. But their contributions, each of them have their own kind of author within them. And I have an article or two in the book as well. Okay. So it's like the person that puts the project together and edits it to a cohesive research.
Got it. So do you have the desire to write another book?
Yes. So I'm going to be on sabbatical. As you noted, I'm a full-time professor as well at the Rhode Island School of Design in the architecture department. And I have a sabbatical coming up next year. And one of my dreams is now to write a book, or to do another kind of edited book of Latina architects that can talk about their experience of being bicultural, living in two places, what does it mean, and how they practice. So that's another dream.
Nice. So what made you venture into teaching?
Oh, maybe because along the obstacles that I had along the way, it was mostly from kind of middle school, high school, but I would say in college, I did really well there, and I was really inspired by the professors that taught me, like how to see, how to do well. So I think what inspired me to teach was basically that, to give it back, to pay it forward.
What do you love the most about teaching?
What I love about teaching is transforming students that didn't know they had it in them to do exceptionally well. And to motivate them. I feel like I'm a motivator and an activist at heart, and my tools and devices to have more of an impact in the world is to be a professor and to be my own entrepreneur.
Wow. What is the most challenging part of being a professor?
That's a very good question. What's the most challenging part? Maybe internal politics. But I wouldn't say it's challenging, but I would say kind of navigating how to be more effective. So, for example, my agenda right now is to see whether the college can look at itself in terms of the time of class offering. So, for example, you're talking about balance of work and life. I would say that my academic schedule hinders on my quality time with my kids. So if I have to teach studios till 6:10, or I have academic committee meetings in the evening, there might be a week where I don't see my kids twice a week, and that's very painful for me. Yeah. So the challenge is, how do you make an institution look at itself to say, well, this is not really an environment that kind of accepts the fact that for us to be creative human beings and happy, we have to have that balance where you can leave work at a specific time.
Yes, absolutely. What do they call it? Work-life balance.
Yeah.
So when a semester is over, what do you want your students to remember about you, or say they have learned from taking your class? Is there any one thing that you want to make sure that your students leave you and they have? if that makes
Well,
sense.
I'm always projecting, hopefully kind of passion for what you do. But what was really nice is that I recently received an Instagram message from one of the parent of a student that I just taught.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what was nice about the message from a parent was that it's kind of reflective of the values that you put forward when you are teaching a class. And the parent basically said, thank you for being a teacher, for providing an opportunity where my child can visit another country, and that was Mexico. I just took 10 students to Mexico City and Monterrey, and basically this parent said, it's been very difficult for a student of color to be in this political climate right now, and thank you for letting my child see how wonderful the people of Mexico are and how kind they are. Thank you. So I think that to me was, and I'm paraphrasing here,
Mm-hmm.
when I received that message, it made me realize how important it is that I keep introducing students to our global world. Like, it's not
Yes.
about oneself.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And I think you can relate because you're Jamaican, right?
yes.
So,
Absolutely. Yes, I can.
or should I not reveal too much about?
No,
my
you
BFF?
can. I always reveal that, so that's okay.
Okay.
I'm proud of my heritage, so
Okay.
big up to my Jamaicans out there.
And people probably don't know I'm Colombian, so
Yes.
big ups to my Colombians out there.
That's right, Colombiana. So, when you look at where you are today in your life, what are you the most proud of?
When I look at what I'm most proud of, I would say perseverance, the not willing to give up. I think I'm probably the most proud of
Okay.
in terms of character. So I can't give you. I would say there's certain things, but I would say they were materialistic, right? Like, oh, I build my own home.
no,
those
but
are
that's
materialistic.
good. That's
or
okay.
or I got my license, for example. That was another moment.
Your driver's license?
No, my
Oh.
architectural license.
I was like, wait a minute now, girl.
Oh, make sure your architect is licensed
Yes.
when you need an architect. But yeah, so I would say those, but I would say character, and I have to probably thank my mom, right, for
Yeah.
that, for building character.
Yes, absolutely. So, would you ever do a reality show about your business? Like, how you see all these flip and flop and home builders, whatever. Would you ever do that?
Would I ever do a reality show?
Yeah, like expose people to the everyday life of what an architect, your studio, what you do.
Sure.
I mean,
sure. I'm open to many opportunities.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm
Why-
open to anything.
Why not?
If I
you?
can do it with you, I'll do it.
Absolutely. I mean, girl, you could be, really, you could really reach the people that you want to reach with that kind of a platform. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be ratchet like Love and Hip Hop. Do you feel like you are living a passionate and purpose-driven life?
I do. I do feel like I'm living a purposeful life. I'm very happy. I wish the world can work on it
Yeah.
in terms of world peace. But I do feel like I'm contributing to our society.
Absolutely. I do too. I'm so proud of you. You are amazing.
Thank you. I'm so glad
Seriously.
you're making this podcast because it's so important. Well, one of the things that I hope my kids can look up to is I hope they don't have to struggle, or even with my kids' school. I want to make sure that they have a library where, folks of color are they're in the foreground, they're in front of you.
Yeah.
That's the society I want to live in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, because this is the Oh Hell No podcast, you have to share an Oh Hell No experience that you've had in your life. It could be with a potential client, a new client, an old client, maybe something that happened during college or something that happened yesterday. Anything that made you pause and say, oh, hell no, in your head or even out loud.
I wish you gave this question to me as so I can think about it.
I
Can you
know.
give me one of your hell no, and then maybe you might spark a hell no moment of my.
Oh, God.
I'll give you an oh hell no moment.
Okay.
I was a project manager working for a firm, and the developer, we were at the table. I was the only woman there on the table, but I was leading the project. And the developer client asked me to go make some photocopies. And I said, "Oh, hell no." When I didn't literally say, "Oh, hell
Right.
no." I just looked at him up and down.
Right.
And I gave it to the other architect, the other guy assistant.
Right. Like,
working with me on the project.
don't you
But
hate
that was
that?
kind of yeah, there's a lot of always assumptions.
Yes, yes. And that's across the board, because I've gotten that too. Like, it's just across the board. I think that women experience that a lot, you know.
Right.
So I'm proud of you for saying, "Here, Joe, can you go handle this?"
Right.
Well, it was
good.
so much fun talking to you and having you on my podcast. Thank you so much. Tell us
so much, Nicole.
where can we get your book?
Well, you can order it on Amazon, and also you can look at our firm's work at www.studioluz, that's studioluz.net, net, or you can just Google Studio Luz Architects, and you can look at some of our work.
Yes, yes. Please check her out. She's amazing. So thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, Nicole.